Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Wednesday's assembly. How are you all? I hope you're all good, and I hope you're all ready to go with me again back in time. Now, I've been promising you this for the last few assemblies. I promised you that I'd show you the old school bell that still lives in our school. In fact, it has a very special place in my cupboard, and we were still using this bell until really recently, actually, certainly whilst I've worked at the school. So I'll let you have a look at it first before I ring it. So here it is. This is the school bell, and I firmly believe that this school bell is Victorian. If you Google Victorian school bell, they look exactly like this. And the other reason I believe this to be Victorian is that it is such good craftsmanship. It's made of brass. There's the clanger inside, and it's lasted all of these years, and it's got a wooden handle. And this would have been really important if you were one of the very first children to go to school back in time at the old school building, which we know was built by the Victorians in 1874 and opened in 1876. And bells were really important then because people didn't have phones or watches, and so they wouldn't really have known what time school started and ended. So the headmistress or the headmaster would come out onto the school steps and ring the bell so that all the children in the village of Northowram would be able to hear that it was time for lessons to start. And I'm going to ring it now, and I have to tell you, if you don't like loud noises, because it is really quite loud, and it had to be, of course, because everybody from far and wide needed to hear it, then do cover your ears now. So if you don't like loud noises, cover your ears. I'm going to you have to really stand up to give the bell a good ring. You okay, Elise? Have you got your ears covered? Here we go. I'm going to ring the school bell, imagining that I'm in Victorian times. Here we go. It's time for lessons to start. Oh, my ears are ringing. I don't know how that sounded in your classrooms, but it sounded fairly loud in my dining room. My ears are still ringing, and that was brilliant. So all of the children would know, there's the bell, and it would be rung and rung to help all the children know it was time to come to school and when it was time to finish school. So I thought it would be fun and interesting for today and tomorrow for us to learn a little bit more about what it might have been like if we were a child in the Victorian times and going to the old school. And I reckon that because this is a Victorian bell, I reckon this was made by the Victorians and probably came with that the old school, the one that's now housing. And I think it was then probably passed up when the new school opened, where we are now. And there it's been ever since. And it still could be in use, maybe. What do you think? Maybe we should bring back the school bell and I should ring you in every morning. You'll have to let me know what you think of that idea. So, would it have been a good thing to have been going to school in the Victorian times or a bad thing? Have a little think as we start to read our book. We'll do half today and half tomorrow. So our book is Life in the Past, Victorian Schools, and there they all are. There's a photograph from Victorian times of the look like all girls, actually, don't they? And actually there's a big difference between what education was like for boys and what education was like for girls in the Victorian times. So you'll have to let me know what you think about that. Who were the Victorians? Queen Victoria reigned in Britain from 1837 to 1901. So the building of the old school was right in the middle of that period. People who lived at this time are called Victorians. Some Victorians were very rich and others were very poor indeed. Victorian life was very different from today. Many of our everyday things were not invented yet at the start of Victoria's reigns. There were no cars, telephones or computers. So this photograph from London was taken in 1896, and it shows a horse-drawn bus and a motor bus in a busy London street. There, look at that horse-drawn one. So there were still a lot of vehicles. Certainly if we lived in Northowram at that time, or the towns and the cities, a lot of the vehicles would still have been pulled by horses at that time. when the children first started going to school in our village. Schools then and now. At the beginning of Victoria's reign, many children got little or no schooling at all, especially the poor children. But by the end of Victoria's reign, her time on the throne, children had to go to school until they were 12. So that was one of the big things that the Victorians gave to us, good and bad, was the right for all children to have an education. Victorian schools were much stricter than today. Children had to sit in rows, it tells us. And isn't that funny? There's a picture of the children in Victorian times sitting in rows in the classroom. And isn't it, oh, look at that little girl. She looks like she's fallen asleep. Look on that boy's shoulder. Isn't it funny that now, because of COVID, we all have to sit in rows again, just like in the Victorian times? What goes around comes around. Now, I'm just going to read you the bit about the difference of schooling for boys and for girls, because now we all get the same education because we realise that girls and boys are equal and have the same right to the same education. And we no longer have strong ideas about these are jobs for boys and these are jobs for girls. We know that boys can do any job that they want to do, that they study in, and girls can do any job that they study in. But back then, most girls from rich families didn't go to school. They were taught at home by a governess or a tutor, and sometimes their younger brother shared their lessons. Many families, see what you think about this, girls and boys, thought that girls only needed a very basic education. They were taught mainly things that they would need to attract a husband, such as singing, drawing and needlework. And here's a famous painting by an artist called Renoir of two girls at the time, and this is what Victorians at the start of Victoria's reign thought that girls should have in terms of their education. They should learn to play the piano, learn to sew, and learn all the things that they would need to attract a good husband. What do you think of that, girls? Is that enough? Should there have been very separate things for girls to learn and boys to learn? I'll leave you to ponder that. Boys, you would have had a tough time though. It wasn't easy. If you were a boy and in a rich family, you would have been sent away to boarding school, which is where you not only go to school, but you sleep there as well, from around the age of 7. So from around the age of 7, so year 2, year 3 boys, you would have been sent away if you were from a rich family to go to a boarding school, and you wouldn't see your parents at all for weeks and weeks and weeks on end. Would that have been good? Would it have been bad? Their lives in boarding school were harsh and uncomfortable at school to toughen them up. And the boys shared a bedroom called a dormitory at boarding school, and they had cold water for washing and bare floors to toughen them up. That was an idea in the Victorian times there. Look, that's a dormitory. It looks very plain indeed. Oh, I'm not sure I would have liked that going away. Other families might have sent their sons to local grammar schools, where boys only, at this point, girls weren't allowed to go. Boys were expected to work hard, be clean and neat, and obey their teacher. No matter how boring the lesson, these boys had to pay attention or they would be punished. Let's have a look at this photograph here. So only boys could go to grammar school, and I know lots of you in year 6 are going off to grammar school, both boys and girls, so that's a big change, isn't it? And they had, I do like the Victorian desks actually, they had a lid on them there, a bit like your trays. They could lift up the lid on their desks and they'd have all of the things that they needed for the lesson in there. And there's the master at the front of the classroom there, and all the boys having to be very, very good, because if they weren't, they would get punished. Oh, okay. Have a little think about what do you think in the Victorian times the punishments might have been. I'll leave that with you to ponder, and I'll let you know tomorrow. It's another big change from all the way back then. So girls and boys that went to the old school, they would have been punished in very different ways to what happens now if you don't follow the school rules. So tomorrow we'll learn a little bit about why that changed and what Queen Victoria and the governments at that time decided was the right thing. And I'll tell you more about what life was like in the classrooms. So I'll ring my bell one more time tomorrow just because I enjoy it so much. I'll see you in the morning. But whilst you're going through your day today, think about it. Do you think you would have liked to have been a child in a Victorian school? Or are you really rather glad that it's 2021 and we're in Northowram Primary School today? I'll leave that with you to have a little think about. I'll see you tomorrow for more bell ringing. See you in the morning. Bye-bye.